Om Sarvadharmasthapakastam Sarvadharmaswarupakaha Acharyanam Mahacharyo Ramakrishna Ayate Namaha. We are studying Sri Ramakrishna the Great Master, the fifth part, Master in Divine Mood and Narendranath, and in that we are reading the seventh chapter, the Master's Method of Tasting and Narendranath. And we have found that Saradananda Swamiji has analyzed this method of tasting into four different parts. The first is the shape or appearance of parts of the body and also the functions of those parts. Second is man's ordinary activities reveal that what are his general tendencies and character. Third is these very ordinary activities reveal also that how much is he given to lust and go, or how less. And the fourth one is that how he can judge Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna, knowing himself to be the full manifestation of spirituality, it was natural for him to see if one has appreciated how much and in what form. That revealed both things, his conception about God and about the reading about Sri Ramakrishna. So he got various answers. Now, as an example of this, we are going to para 29. The first example of this, the devout Purnachandra and the kidnapping teacher. That is, small boys like Purna and others were brought to Sri Ramakrishna by Master Mahasaya. So he got the kidnapping teacher name. It may well be said that Purna was a mere boy when he came to the Master. It seems he was just a little over 13 then, and he could find Sri Ramakrishna immediately. Sri Mahendra, the great devotee of the Master, was then the headmaster of the school at Shambhadar, established by the broad-minded Vidyasagar. He used to bring to the Master at Dakshineshwar those boys who by nature were found to possess love of God. By nature had their love of God. Thus he took to him one after another Teja Chandra, Narayan, Haripada, Vinod, Junior Naren, Pramatha, under Nemple too, and other boys of the Bagbazar quarter, who took refuge in the Master. Some of us therefore called him in fun the kidnapping teacher. Hearing it, the Master would say, smiling, it is the right appellation for him. Yes. One day while teaching the boys of the class 3 of the school, we have to understand these three. The Bengal system in those days was to count from reverse of matriculation. Class 3, a boy of 13 does not study in class 3, as we understand. So this class 3 means 10, 9, 8, 8th class. He was a student of the 8th class according to our standards. So one must understand the terminology. In those days in Bengal and Calcutta, the classes were counted in reverse order from matriculation. So, the boys of the class 3 of the school, his mind was attracted with the fine nature and sweet talk of Purna. And shortly afterwards, he made arrangements for introducing the boy to the Master. Arrangement why? The arrangements were of course made secretly, for Purna's guardians were men of a harsh temperament. So if they should know it, both teacher and pupil were sure to be insulted. Purna therefore came to school as the usual time for fully prank or kidnapping. Purna therefore came to school at the usual time and went to Dakshineshwar in a hired carriage. And returning to the school before it was closed for the day, he went home at the usual hour. So within the school time, master brought him to Dakshineshwar. The master was pleased to see Purna. He spoke of his high spiritual fitness. The master was highly pleased to see Purna that day and giving him instruction and light refreshments with great affection, said at the time of his return, "Come whenever it is convenient for you. Come in a carriage. There will be arrangements here about the payment of your carriage hire." So that day the master came brought, but afterwards Thakur made arrangement from his in Dakshineshwar itself, from Thakur's salary, you may say, which used to be with mother. He said to us afterwards, Purna is a part of Narayana. That is, he is a Vishnu type by nature. And a spiritual aspirant possessing a high degree of sattva. Yes, they are sattva gunis. In this respect, he may be said to occupy a place immediately below Naren. So high position is being given for his sattva guna. With the coming of Purna, now incidentally but significant, with the coming of Purna, the circle of devotees of that class whom I saw long ago in yogic vision, coming here for the purpose of realizing God is complete. Complete means Purna. So, those who had seen him in vision, the last is Purna. So, when Purna is coming, that becomes Purna. Therefore, no one of that class will come here anymore. There will be so many people coming to Thakur after that for their own salvation. But those who are seen by Thakur in his yogic vision, about them he is the last. The master's loving behavior towards Purna. Purna had an extraordinary change in his mental state that day. That is his high quality. The memory of his past relation with the master was awakened. So he has been the companion of Avatar again and again and made him completely calm and enthroned. Incessant tears of bliss streamed forth from his eyes. The tears of bliss are different from tears of sorrow. For fear of his guardians, he had to make a great effort to control himself before he went home that day. Otherwise, he would not have gone. He would have remained more with Thakur on the first day itself. But because of the stern nature of the guardians, he wanted to go before the school closes. And for that, he had to make a great effort. There appeared since then a very great eagerness in the master's mind to see Purna often and feed him. So, as he said, just below Narendra, so that eagerness is just below Narendra. He sent him various kinds of food whenever there was an opportunity. Food does not mean meals, special food. He instructed the man who took them to Purna to hand them over to him secretly. For if that were known in his household, there was a possibility of his being ill-treated. The master's eagerness to see Purna. At the time of his second meeting with Purna, he asked him the question, "What's your idea about me? Who am I?" In the second meeting itself, he has seen Thakur for the first time only and second time. On many occasions, we saw the master shedding incessant tears at his eagerness to see Purna. They have seen many times. So, as he described, it is just below Narendra. Seeing us full of surprise owing to his behavior, one day he said, "You are amazed to see me thus attracted towards Purna. I don't know how you would have felt had you seen the longing that arose in my heart when I passed on Naren, and how very restless I was on that occasion." Whenever he was eager to see Purna, the master would come to Calcutta at midday and going to Balram Basu's house at Bhagwadar or to the house of anyone else of that quarter as near as the Shambhadar school as possible. Shambhadar is next to Bhagwadar. Or to the house of anyone else of that quarter, would send word and have him called from school. It was at one of such places that Purna had the privilege of seeing the master for the second time and was completely merged in his self that day. Second time he is merged in self. The master on that occasion fed him with his own hand like an affectionate mother and asked him, "Well, what's your idea about me? Who am I?" Overwhelmed by an extraordinary impulse of the heart and swelling with devotion. Impulse means he did not have much to think. Immediately it came. And swelling with devotion, Purna replied, "You are the divine Lord, God Himself." The master was pleased with the reply, his instruction to the boy. So he could understand. The master found no limit to his joy and astonishment that day when he knew that the boy Purna could accept him as the highest spiritual ideal as soon as he saw him. So God means the highest spiritual ideal. He blessed the boy with all his heart and gave him instruction about the secret of spiritual practice and initiated him with a potent sacred mantra immediately. Afterwards, returning to Dakshineshwar, he said to us again and again, "Well, Purna is a mere boy. His intellect has not developed. How has he understood it?" Under the impulse of divine impression, some others also give the same answer to that question. It is not that others did not give, but Purna gave as a very young boy. It is surely due to the impressions accumulated during previous life that the picture of untarnished truth naturally appears to their pure sattvic mind. So sattvic mind is a good reflector and immediately the truth shines there. The greatness of Purna who lived in the world. Now the question is, he was not an apostle like other sannyasis, he married, and yet we see that his character and spirituality was of a high degree. Purna had to marry by the force of circumstances because they have seen their stern parents and he was a small boy and live a family life. But all those who were closely related with him unanimously bear witness to his extraordinary faith, reliance on God, love of sadhana, freedom from egoism, and selflessness in all respect. So essential spiritual merits are being enumerated. Extraordinary faith, reliance on God, love of sadhana, freedom from egoism, and selflessness in all respects. So, first example is Purna. Now, one more example of how they found Thakur. Second example, that question was put to Vaikunthanath and his reply. Vaikunthanath, we have entertained him previously. We shall give another example showing that the master put that question to the devotees who took refuge in him. Not so even second immediately. The master showed the picture of the great Lord Sri Chaitanya in Sankirtan, kept in his room to a person very well known to us, friend of Saradananda. Shortly after that person came to Dakshineshwar and said, "That means first time?" I don't think so. Let me see. Dakshineshwar Agamaner Swalpakal Pore. It does not mean the first visit. Na? Swalpakal Pore means he has started coming to Dakshineshwar and after a few days. That is the meaning. Put the question to the devotees who took refuge in him, showed the picture, and person very well known to us. Shortly after that person came to Dakshineshwar. We may say, shortly after that person started coming to Dakshineshwar. Within a few days of his coming to Dakshineshwar, that would be within a few days after that person came to Dakshineshwar. Do you know, do you see how all are filled with divine emotions? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates. And that picture shows Chaitanya in Sankirtan, singing and dancing the name of Hari. That person, sir, they are all low class fellows. What is this reply? You have to understand this. Huh? Now, some Orthodox people, so-called Vedantins, even today, hold that only Brahmins are qualified. And that is these Jnanis, so-called. Now, Bhaktas in general, whether Ramanujites in the south or in Andhra, and similarly with Chaitanya, he is to admit or he is to make them a part of the his special devotees, those who belong to the lower caste also. Now this gave impression to the others that they are all localist people. That is the genesis of Vaikuntanath's reply. That because what we call low class people also were admitted, so the general impression of the people outside was that low class people go there. The master, how is it? Should one say so? That person, yes sir, I belong to Nadia. Nadia is short form of Navadvip, Chaitanya's place. I know these Vaishnavas are generally low class fellows. So that is the impression. The master, you belong to Nadia. Then I make another salutation to you. Another means that was Sri Ramakrishna's habit. As anybody came, Thakur used to make pranam to you. Because he sees God in all. And so the first response is pranam. Now if he is coming from Nadia, then association with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he says those people are low class, but Thakur holds anybody coming from Nadia in high respect. See the variation. You belong to Nadia, then I make another salutation to you. Well, Ram and others, we know, Ramchandra Dutta, well, Ram and others call this showing his own person, is this, an incarnation. So he has given them a base to tell. Let me know what you think of it. So if he does not think, he said, I don't think you are an incarnation. But taking incarnation as the base, the question is asked. Because see, what is the reply? Then we'll understand why this question is asked. That person, sir, have they used a word of such low import? So his concept of God, incarnation, in that incarnation is not very high. The master, how is that? they say incarnation of God and you say it is of low import. That person, yes, sir. An incarnation is a part of God. So according to his concept, he is comparing. And that is why Thakur has given him such a question. To me, it seems you are Shiva himself. The master, what do you say? That person. That thought comes to my mind, pray, what can I do? You have asked me to meditate on. So quite a time has passed, then he has come to Sri Ramakrishna. You have asked me to meditate on Shiva, but I cannot succeed in it, though I try daily to do so. As soon as I sit down for meditation, your gracious face appears radiant before me. Automatically, not instructed, not attempted. I can by no means bring in Shiva by removing it. Rather, that face forces itself on it. Nor do I feel inclined to. So, I would force if I want to, but that is so important for me. So, I meditate on you as Shiva. The master affectionately smiling, oh, what a thing to say. But I know I am like a tiny hair of yours. You see, Sri Ramakrishna as a human being, because everybody is God for him, he takes this position. But he has already asked the question and he has got the correct reply. Both laughed because tiny hair, he said. I had much anxiety about you. I am now freed of it today. So, both sides, huh? As a human being, he shows his tiny hair. But he wanted to know whether he has judged him correctly or not. And that is fulfilled. More than, we do not know whether that person understood at that time why the master spoke the last of the quoted words. In such cases, it is known to us, our hearts swelled with joy to feel that the master had become pleased, and we had no desire left to try to understand those words of his. The master, we feel, said those words to that person. Now he is analyzing, huh? Because he knew that that person had accepted him as the highest spiritual ideal. Now, there is other side to his testing people, and that is he wanted people to test him and then understand things. So that is a very important thing. I remember an incident. Myself and my companion in Rishikesh, we went to some ashram for the feast. And by somebody's mistaken invitation, we had reached half an hour earlier. We were sitting there, and there was a small booklet about the rules of that ashram. And my friend read it. He opened it and saw that you should never check the behavior of the sadhus here. You have to accept blindly what they are doing or their character. So my friend put it to me, because we have been taught in our order, Sri Ramakrishna is telling us, test me and then be satisfied. So without proper understanding, they should not blindly, somebody takes somebody and says he is a high man, and we believe he is a high man. That should not be there. And in such a way, how many people have been fooled by so many godmen? You know, they create a hype, and before that godman, so-called, appears in the sabha, so many things they do, which fills the hearer's mind already, and then the godman appears. So all this humbug Thakur did not want. So a new thing as supplement to what has been said. No one whose words and actions do not agree should be believed. What he talks and what he acts, that one should see. The master tried his best to see that the devotees who had taken refuge in him should observe minutely all his deportment and behavior and knowingly accept him in that manner. For very often he said to us, observe a holy man in the daytime, observe him at night, and then have faith in him. Night activities means you understand. The Master always encouraged us to observe whether a holy man practiced what he taught others. He said that one should not believe a man whose thoughts, words and actions do not agree. One should never believe. We heard the Master sometimes tell a story in this connection. Master's every teaching was through story. The Master's story bearing on this topic, the physician and the boy patient. Here, it is in front of them he did not behave. And Thakur wants them to observe him always. There was a man whose young son always suffered from indigestion. One day the father took him for treatment to a famous physician in a remote village. The physician examined the boy and diagnosed his disease, but instead of prescribing medicine for the patient, he asked him to come again on the morrow. When the father went to him the next day with his son, the physician said to the boy, give up taking molasses, jaggery, and the disease will be cured. There is no need to take medicine. Hearing these words, the father said, Sir, you might have very well said this yesterday in that case, I need not have taken so much trouble to come so far today. The physician replied, don't you see, I had a few jars full of molasses here yesterday. You perhaps noticed it. Had I forbidden the boy yesterday to take molasses, he would have thought that the physician was a peculiar person indeed. He takes so much of molasses himself and asked me to refrain from it. Thinking so, he would not have any faith in my words, not to speak of regard for them. That is why I did not tell you so before removing the jars of molasses. The devotees tested the Master. Now, as a result of this, how the devotees tested. Encouraged by the teaching of the Master, all of us minutely observed all his deportment and behavior. Some again did not hesitate to test him, observe and test him. It was seen that he gladly put up with all the undue liberty we took with him. Of course, in all sincerity, undue liberty, but in all sincerity, not just for checking. For the increase of our faith and devotion. So that is what happens as a result. The following incident is a clear example of this. Again, Swami Yogananda has come. First example, the story of Swami Yogananda. We already told the reader certain things about Swami Yogananda. He was the hero of this story, and we heard it from him afterwards. So the story is heard not from Sri Ramakrishna but from Yogananda himself. And he himself is the main part, so he is called hero. We shall first give a brief introductory description of Swami Yogananda before we begin to narrate the story. One thing we thought of 2 days back, but that is described here now. The pre-monastic name of Yogananda was Yogendranath Rai Chaudhary. To the non-Bengalis, this R-A-Y should not be pronounced as Ray. It should be pronounced as Rai, even as Roy Chaudhary or Rai Chaudhary. He was born in the well-known family of Savarna Chaudharys. You see, Savarna means belonging to the Brahman Kshatriya Vaishya class. And below that, Chaudharis are there by designation. Chaudharis means the village head or something like that. So some by designation they belong. But these people belong their higher caste, so it is called Savarna. His father Navin Chandra was a rich zamindar at one time. Zamindar means landholder. And the family had been living for generations in the village of Dakshineshwar itself. Yogendra's home always resounded with the recital of the Mahabharata, the Bhagavata and other scriptures, rich and also devout. And other scriptures, worship, kirtan and so on during his childhood. And before that period, before he was born and during his childhood, that was the state of affairs. The master said that he went to that house many times during the period of his sadhana with a view to listening to the discourses on Hari and was acquainted with some of the members of that house. During his sadhana, it is important to listen to things. So he went to listen to Hari's kirtan discourses. But scarcely had Yogendra passed his early boyhood when they lost a greater part of their property owing to domestic quarrels and various other reasons, and the Chaudhary family was fast approaching penury. Very poor they became. The good impressions of Yogendra and his intelligence. Yogendra was calm, mild, and possessed of a sweet nature from the childhood. Sweet means his behavior and other things with people would be full of a gentle sweetness. It would be joy to people, that is called sweet. He was born with extraordinary good qualities. As the child grew up to have a sort of knowledge about himself and the world, the thoughts always came to his mind that he was not of this world. Very small boy, but just thought came about himself and the world. This was not the place of his true residence. His real residence was in a certain distant group of stars, and his familiar companions were still living there in a very high spiritual sphere. We never saw him becoming angry on that trait. Swami Vivekananda said, if there is amongst us anyone who has conquered lust in all respects, it is Yogi. Although he was because all the disciples conquered lust, but in all respects, he is this special teacher. Although he was sometimes scolded by the master because he naively believed all sorts of people, Yogendra was not foolish, normal. Faith is too bad. Though he was always seen quietly engaged in his own duties, the conclusions at which his active mind arrived by observing all actions of people proved invariably to be true. So, good judge of people. Therefore, he seemed to be a little proud of his intelligence. The master said that Yogendra was an Ishwar Koti devotee. A new word has come here. What is Ishwar Koti? Let me explain, because many people have confusion because of this word, like Ishwara. What is like Ishwara? What is the difference between an individual and Ishwara? Ishwara has the universal mind. We have a particular mind. Our particular mind associated with this particular body. That is our personality. In other cases, in some people, the body is one, but the mind is universal. If I give some examples, you will find out. In Maharashtra, there has been a saint, Samartha Ramdas Swami. When he was a young boy, his name was Narayan. And one day his mother found he was missing. She went to his friends' houses and all that. She could not find anywhere. And after about 40 minutes, she found him in the house itself, standing behind a cover. So she asked him, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Mother, I am thinking of the world." That means she is thinking of the problems of the world and how it will come out of it. That is called Ishwara Koti. I will give big example of one who is believed as incarnation. That is Bhagavan Buddha. Buddha had no touch of sorrow in his life. But he came to know that there is sorrow in this world. And all his attempt at sadhana was not for himself at all. He tried to find out the cause of that sorrow, which is present universally. And he found out the solution to remove that cause. And that is what makes him Buddha. So, no problem in his life, but he felt the problem of all people. This is Ishwar Koti. So, Ishwar Koti is nothing but having a universal mind in a particularized body. Now, Purna has been described as Ishwar Koti. So, we do not see that manifestation in him, but the mind was of that nature. In this respect, let me tell some more things. Some people think that Saradananda Swami was not of that high order because he is not Ishwar Koti. Some people ask Mahapurush Maharaj, "Your name is not in the Ishwar Koti list." He replied, "I was a Jeev Koti, Thakur made me Ishwar Koti." We know well that what Mahapurush Maharaj's mind was. But that might have become like that after realization. Anyway, so this is Ishwar Koti, and Saradananda Swamiji is a sage of the highest order. The master said that Yogananda was an Ishwar Koti devotee. Being a resident of Dakshineshwar, he had the blessing of meeting the master when he had hardly reached his youth. The master was highly pleased to see him when Yogendra was introduced to him for the first time. He became convinced that Yogen was one of those who had been shown by the Divine Mother long ago as destined to come to him for spiritual enlightenment. Nay, he came to know a little later, little after, by the grace of the Universal Mother, that he was one of those 6 marked persons who were known as Ishwar Kotis. Negatively speaking, Bhavanath is mentioned as one of the Ishwar Kotis. And he married and became drowned in his wife and all that thing we know. Yogendra married and repented. He shrank from going to the master who cleverly had him brought to him and gave him assurance. We have said elsewhere that Yogendra married suddenly against his will on account of his mother's pathetic weeping. He said, "As soon as I married, the thought came to me that the hope of God realization is now a mockery. Why should I go to the master whose very first teaching was the renunciation of lust and gold?" Not that Thakur did not have his household devotees, not that they did not realize God, but the impression by seeing Thakur is always like this. Those who are qualified for that, they will always feel by Thakur's words and uh, actions that he wants people to give up marriage in order to realize God. Go to the master whose very first teaching was the renunciation of lust and God. I have spoiled my life on account of the tenderness of my heart. It cannot be undone now. The sooner I die, the better for me. So much he went into depression. I used to visit the master daily before, but after this event, I had altogether stopped going to him and been passing my days in utter despair and repentance. But the master did not forsake me. He sent word again and again, calling me to him. But when he saw that I did not go, in spite of all that, he hit upon a particular device. A certain person of the Kali temple had given me a few rupees to buy some article for him before my marriage. There was a balance of a few annas left. We now know annas. I sent him the article through a man and sent word also that I would soon send him the balance. But because of this marriage problem, he was not going there. The master knew of this and feigning anger, one day sent a man to say to me on his behalf, "What sort of a man are you? You have neither returned the balance nor even sent word when you will return it to the person who gave you the money to buy his article. What you ought to have done is to submit an account of the money spent and to pay up the balance." These words touched my pride. I was grievously wounded. I thought, the master has taken me to be a cheat after I have kept the company for so long a time. Well, I will go somehow today and put an end to the quarrel, and I will never again turn my steps toward the Kali temple. I was almost dead with despair, repentance, wounded pride, resentment, etc. when I betook myself to the Kali temple in the afternoon. I saw from a distance that the master was standing outside his room as if in ecstasy with his dhoti in his armpit. As soon as he saw me, he came quickly forward saying, "You have married. What of that? Marry a lakh of wives. No harm can touch you if you but have the grace of this place," meaning himself. Lack of wives, is it the expression? Lakta vivaha kurileo kona katiyo na. Meaning may be same, but the force becomes different. I would have said, may near lack of wives, no. Marry. Marry a lack of times, I would say. Marry a lack of times. No harm can touch you if you have but the grace of this place. If you want to live a family life and realize God, you see that is possible. At the same time, once bring your wife here. I will make both her and you fit for that. So sex free, he will make them. And if you want to renounce worldly life and attain him, I will make that too quite possible for you. It will not be difficult. You will come out. Finally, his wife was protected by the Holy Mother. And towards the end of Yogin Maharaj's life, she made that wife serve Yogin Maharaj for some time, though he was protesting, so that she will have the share of virtue and spirituality. These words of the Master spoken in divine semi-consciousness penetrated deep into my heart, and the former darkness of despair vanished into the void. I bowed down to him with tears in my eyes. That is joy now and love. He too affectionately caught hold of my hand and entered his room with me. He had come out and now he's gone back. He did not give ear to what I was going to say about the above mentioned account and the balance. So that was the pretext to bring him in. Yogendra was born with the mood of an all-renouncing religious mendicant. So that is his nature. And against that nature he has married. He married, but that mood of his did not at all undergo a change. He devoted his time ever increasingly to the service of the Master. Now his only refuge. Yogi's parents began to complain when they saw their son indifferent to worldly affairs and to the earning of money. He said one day while mother was making that complaint, she remarked, "Why then have you married if you don't like to apply your mind to the earning of money?" I said, "I told you again and again at the time that I would not marry. I consented at last to do so only because I could not bear to see you weep." We had discussed that incident. He was in some other town and reports went to his parents that he has lost interest in the world. So they informed him as if his mother is sick. And for that he came and saw nobody is sick and everybody is in readiness for celebration and something. Then he understood this catch. In between, his father has agreed to some girl's father that I will make my son marry with her. I said, "I told you again and again at the time that I would not marry. I consented at last to do so only because I could not bear to see you weep." Highly incensed at these words, mother said, "You don't say so. You married for my sake, without a desire for it. Whoever believes that?" Absolutely stunned at these words of hers, I thought, my lord, she is the very person whose suffering I was unable to witness and for whose sake I was ready to forsake thee, God. Away with it. There is no one else in the world except the Master whose thoughts and words agree. An absolute abhorrence for the world has possessed my mind ever since. So the result is reverse. I have started spending nights also with the Master since then, not caring for what they say. And Master made him like that. Yogendra spent the night at Dakshineshwar. This is the genesis of his spending the night there. And this incident of testing the Master happens to be in the night. Spending the whole day with the Master one day, Yogendra saw that all the devotees who were at Dakshineshwar temple took leave of him just before dusk and went home. Yogendra gave up the idea of going home on that occasion, thinking that the Master might be in difficulty if he were in need of anything at night, when no one would be near him. The Master too became highly pleased to see Yogin pass the night there because of his spiritual development. Absorbed in spiritual talk, they did not notice that the night was fairly advanced. It was 10. The Master then took some light refreshment. When Yogendra took his meal after 10, the Master asked him to sleep within the room and himself went to bed. When it was past midnight, the Master had a desire to go out. That is for answering nature's call. He looked at Yogin and found him quite asleep. Thinking that Yogin would be troubled if he woke him up after his having just entered into deep sleep, he proceeded alone toward the Panchavati and then went to the group of the tamarisk tree to answer calls of nature. They were situated beyond the Panchavati. Yogendra suspected the master, that extra intelligence in him. Yogendra was noted all his life for his short hours of sleep. His sleep came to an end shortly after the master had left. Seeing that the door of the room had been left open, he sat up in his bed and, not finding the master in his cot, wondered where he might have gone at that dead of night. He saw the master spouted and other water pots, spouted water pot, Commander, and other water pots in their proper places, and therefore thought the master might be strolling outside. Because for if you also answer the call of nature, he would take a water pot. But master could never hold a water pot. Yogendra came out, looked around in the moonlight, but saw no one. A terrible suspicion then gripped his mind. Has the master then gone to the Nabat where his wife lives? Does he also deny in action what he professes in words? Yogendra's suspicion removed. Yogendra said, no sooner had that thought crossed my mind that I became simultaneously overwhelmed with suspicion, fear, and various other feelings. Fear means if that happens to be true, who Yogendra will take as idea? And various other feelings. I decided that however cruel and unbecoming it might be, truth must be found out. I then stood at a place near at hand and began watching the door of the Nagar. Scarcely had I done so for a couple of minutes when I heard the clattering sounds of slippers coming from the side of the Panchavati, not from Mohabbat. Very soon the master came up and stood before me and said affectionately, "Ah, you are standing here, I see." I shrank within myself in shame and fear. Oh, I entertained such a terrible suspicion of his character. I stood there with my head hung down and could give no reply to him. The master understood everything from me, my face, but instead of taking offense, at once reassured me and said, "Well, it is all right. Observe a sadhu in the daytime as well as at night and believe him then only." Saying so, he asked me to follow him and proceeded towards his room. I could sleep no more that night, thinking what a great offense I had committed under the impulse of a suspicious nature. Two intelligent boys are sometimes suspicious. Yogendra surrendered himself to the Guru. Swami Vivekananda fully atoned for the above mentioned offense by surrendering himself to the Guru in all respects and laid down his life in the service at first of the Master and after Master's passing away of the Holy Mother. A yogi like Yogendra, having the experience of Samadhi, possessed of intense detachment and equally qualified for devotion and divine knowledge, so many things, is scarcely seen. He passed away in the year 1899 to merge in the Supreme Self. So first to pass away among Thakur's direct disciples. So this is about one thing to be commented here. Now, Sri Ramakrishna in divine mood and Narendranath. So, divine mood can be judged only when there are people who have understood that he is God. And so all the disciples come into that. Not only Naren. Naren is the highest among them. He might have understood Thakur very properly, but not that other disciples did not do so. And so, this in Divine Mood book contains the narration of several of other devotees. So we'll continue reading this, how he applied this to Narendranath, his method of testing. So we'll see that tomorrow. Tomorrow is Sunday. We'll see that Monday. Om Sarvadharma Sthapakastam Sarvadharma Swarupakah Acharyanam Acharyo Ramakrishnaya Te Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Jaya